Hello and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing well. Please like and subscribe as it helps a lot. My children's books are available on Amazon in the link below, and let's get started. So, what is authentic biking culture? To my mind, it always reminds me of a book I read, Status Anxiety by Elaine de Botton. It's an incredibly interesting book and explains a lot the behaviour of people. I thoroughly recommend you read it. Let me discuss the book and give you some examples of how I think it applies. Human beings, consciously and subconsciously, are driven by status. Many years ago, deep in our history, low status could be fatal to a human. It leads to a lack of access of resources and could spell certain doom. Because of that, it's never far from our minds. As a tribal animal, whenever we are in groups of any kind, we automatically form status hierarchies. Then we worry about our position within it. There are two aspects of status, the material and the love and adoration of others. Subconsciously, we are always aware of our status in any particular group. Finding yourself low status within a group can be extremely damaging to you both mentally and physically. Human beings, especially those who are mentally weak, are always trying to flex their status to gain approval and reaffirm their position in any particular group. What constitutes status depends on culture. As one particular example, in years gone by, wealthy people would put water features in their gardens, such as fountains. Clean water was often difficult to obtain, so this was a major status flex. Although nowadays clean water isn't an issue for most in Western countries, people will still put water features in their garden and not realise it's a cultural leftover associated with wealth and status from a previous age. This deep, subconscious human need is often exploited by companies trying to sell us stuff. You will notice bike or car manufacturers use this all the time. They will have a model range from low-tier cheap and basic bikes through to the top of the range. Each category overlaps in price, so the top of one category overlaps the bottom of the next. This is to activate status anxiety and tempt people up a model in the range. Even although the next model has more performance and capability than you're ever able to exploit, many manufacturers build a brand too and create feelings around it to try and entice you to spend more. For the everyday rider, is the Ducati 3-4 times better than the Suzuki, or are you just being sold prestige and status? Well, this often works in other markets. Cars are a very good example, and nowadays speak more to status than any other form of transport. Speak to any mechanic and they will tell you to buy a Honda or a Toyota. However, people still overstretch themselves for flash cars. In the real world, however, they're not even as reliable as so-called lesser brands. The bike community is unusual in that our culture, while it's a status hierarchy, it holds values and other things too. An example may be that while we appreciate a Ducati, we're even more appreciative of people who restore a vintage bike too. The universal love of bikes transcends the typical material forces of status anxiety. Those who are true bikers will get a great joy from riding anything. However, there are others who will spend extraordinary amounts of money and barely ride their bike. Having it as a status symbol, so to speak, they like to play the rebel, but it's as much about status than anything else. Ideally, in social hierarchies, we would build them on positive values such as hard work, talent, intelligence, but the market forces are much more powerful than that. A hierarchy of talent would be ideal, but life doesn't work like that. One of the interesting aspects of status, however, is the deep-rooted anxiety that comes with it too. The phenomena first appeared in the early 20th century. As consumerism and mass production took hold, anxiety and competitiveness between people started to appear. If the neighbour got a newer car, this would trigger the status anxiety and people would then feel under pressure to buy a new car to compete with them. Companies loved this, as it creates a continual churn of products and endless profits. It was actually Chrysler who came up with the term planned obsolescence. They realised that they weren't selling enough cars, so every 3 years they would do a model refresh. This gave the illusion that your car was then out of date, again triggering the status anxiety, even although the changes were mostly superficial. Subconsciously, people are always comparing themselves to others and worrying about their status in the tribe. This is a core cause of much of the anxiety in our society. People feel status anxiety when they don't seem to be at the same level of wealth as their community. It is a relatively new phenomenon. Social media then exacerbates this, as often people doing online displays of their material wealth, however much of it is a lie. It messes with our primitive monkey brains and only serves to increase our anxiety, even although we know it isn't real. You will find the sort of people who need to make these displays are deep down very afraid of their status and are very much part of the herd. If you understand status anxiety, you can see a weakness within them. This is exactly why people lease ridiculous cars that have no connection to the realities of transporting yourself around. Before the advent of mass consumerism, it wasn't really an issue, as people were more focused on basic survival. The potato farmer wasn't jealous of the king, as there was no upward mobility and he didn't have to worry about the potato farmer next door, as they were pretty much equal in status anyway. Many people are still deep in this anxiety, especially non-bikers. One of the interesting things about biker culture that is full of rebellious individuals who don't care what people think. Everyone has told them their bike may kill them, but they ignored the tribe and done what pleased them anyway. If anything, the perceived rebellious culture is attractive to those who see through the status and hierarchies. To become a biker is to embrace being a social outcast anyway. As a group, the status-motivating bikers is very different from the mainstream, and it's actually more unusual for a biker to get caught up in it, and while some do, they are often mocked for it. The culture truly appreciates the old Vespa or brand new Ducati, as we are often united in a love of the act of riding itself. I believe this is a root cause of the problems of Harley-Davidson. They push status more than anyone. They pushed prices ever higher, and this is why they are so much trouble now, as the culture has shifted away to a certain extent from materialism as a source of status, almost to the point of confusion where people look at the prices and simply don't understand why you would buy one. It's certainly why they are often mocked, as they used to be a blue-collar brand and have now become obsessed with status and image as opposed to riding the bikes themselves. We have a great quote in the UK which sums up status anxiety. It's "fur coat and no knickers," which is used to describe a person obsessed with appearances even at the expense of their financial well-being. For many, life has become a process of replacing one anxiety with another and one desire with another, an endless series of wants which never satisfy those feelings. Often people will develop a want, which they didn't really need, then they focus on the feelings of satisfaction and imagine how it will make them feel. After acquiring the want, those feelings quickly subside and are replaced by new wants. This leads to an endless cycle of dissatisfaction and debt. Then people feel trapped in their life, unable to see a way out or realise the source of their misery. The real truth is, others don't care even if you exist, so why are you trying to buy their adoration? There are ways in which the hierarchy can also be sidestepped. If you have a particular talent, such as a great musician, despite your humble origins, you can completely circumvent the entire materialism hierarchy, and to some extent, this irritates those who are heavily invested in it. One thing people don't realise is long after you're dead, nobody really remembers your material wealth. However, they will remember your contributions through your actions or what you create. A great act of bravery, a great piece of art, great intellect are some examples of what truly buys status for all time. If you spend a lifetime gaining material wealth, all that happens is your crap is redistributed after you're dead. There is always a deep unease, often that people can't explain, between those who are obsessed with the material and those who gain status through talent or skill. Sometimes it even manifests in forms of bullying by a system towards those who sidestep the hierarchy and achieve great things of their own abilities. Artists and comedians seem to have a deep drive to mock those obsessed with status too. They often perform acts designed to mock and reduce the status of high-status individuals. This is a good thing as it keeps egos in check and grounds those who let too much of the status go to their head. It used to be the case the court jester was the only one who couldn't be killed by the king. They were given a pass, so to speak, to mock power. You could determine a good or bad leader by how they take mockery. A confident, assured leader would roll with it and accept criticism. A bad leader would have them killed. Napoleon, as an example, absolutely hated an English artist who continually mocked him, called James Gillray. He was so incensed with him that he made demands to the British government to turn him over. This is a great example how a talent can completely sidestep a hierarchy and destroy someone's status. Some would say the little man Napoleon syndrome is actually from this, because he used to do a series of illustrations called Little Napoleon to mock him. The book deep dives into hierarchies, forms of hierarchies, the things people will do to gain status, and how fundamentally pointless it is. There is, however, something not touched on in the book which we've seen develop in recent years. As mass consumption and technology improved, quality and luxury became available to everyone. Many people now can have designer clothes, iPhones, and the exclusivity of material wealth has lost its degree of its power. In terms of status, however, as a human reaction, the status anxiety has now manifested in other ways. This is closely tied to the class system. Middle-class people seem the most obsessed with status as they aspire to be upper class and fear dropping down to working class. With our society flooded with luxurious consumer goods, the culture has changed. As a result, I believe a number of new things have become the currency of status. Status often changes over time. For example, if the tribe is embroiled in wars, the warrior types will enjoy the highest status. Our culture at the moment has created its own set of what it believes culturally appropriate values. Status is now traded upon these values like stocks and shares. Moral virtue is one of these. Instead of showing material wealth on social media, many have taken to making displays of moral virtue, even if it's counter to truth. You will notice continuous shifts between support for various causes as the media presents a new cause. Then the people will make a display on social media to assert their position in the tribe. I'm sure you've seen many examples of this, and the truth is they don't really care about the cause, they're only looking to assert their status within the hierarchy. This will often lead to them attacking people they see as threats directly by using these moral values. Rather than formulate good response and debate points, they will simply make assertions and attack them on their moral character. Do you remember when Harley Davidson attempted to embrace the status of moral virtue and it completely backfired on them? A large profit-driven corporation which for decades has been completely driven on material status and profit now pretends to care. People seen through this straight away as it's disingenuous. A Tesla is a hilarious example of the blend of moral virtue and materialism. You not only get to show off your material status, but you also get to pretend you're morally virtuous. Even although we know the resources it takes to make one far cancel out any environmental savings, it's purely a status purchase. Education has become another currency of status. Often you will find that some will continually remind others of their degree or schooling. They know that displaying a Mercedes can be displayed as vulgar to their particular social clique, so instead they will try to assert intellectual dominance over others. Again, they often ignore actual truth and make blind, ridiculous statements on situations. This is a purely status-driven action to protect their position in any given group. It's often particularly used to create status over working class people, especially when the working class person has a talent or skill beyond them. I have often seen middle class people refer to the working class as uneducated, despite the fact that a plumber has significantly more value to society than a person with extensive qualifications. There are many other examples, I'm sure you have noticed them too. I just find these two especially interesting as it impacts on class in a society. Gaining high status is no measure of someone's worth. in terms of their soul. You can be high or low status, but this in no way reflects your value as a person. As you may have seen, a person of the highest possible status can be totally bereft of any virtue. People often confuse value and status and may think someone is better than them because they have more material goods, more status, or, for example, more education. However much society has an obsession with this status, it doesn't really have any impact on your true moral virtue. There are, however, cures to this endless pressure and anxiety put upon us. The first is to simply be aware of status anxiety and understand your position within it. Another thing that is a cure for it is to reflect upon your own mortality. Understand your time here is limited and you should live for yourself and not the approval of others. The material wealth is just dust and you cannot take it with you when you die. In art, you will often see skulls as part of the painting. This is there to remind you of your own mortality and remind you of how you should be living. Understand that nobody actually really cares what you do. Especially strangers, they will forget your interactions immediately and sink back into their own status-driven lives. Learning to not care what others think is the key to freedom, and as bikers we are particularly good at that. I will leave you with a painting from the book, View of the Rotunda of the Bank of England in Ruins by Joseph Gendy, and remember all civilizations return to dust as do you. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a lovely day. Please like and subscribe and check out my children's books in the links below. See you next time. Bye bye.